Hello and welcome. Thank you everybody for coming tonight. I'm so pleased to welcome Carlyn Montes De Oca, the author of Junkyard Girl, a memoir of ancestry, family secrets, and second chances. Carlyn is an award-winning author of 4 books, including Dog is My Doctor and Cat is My Nurse, and Pause for the Good Stuff, as you can see from my background. I'm a big animal fan too. She's an international speaker, an animal human health expert, and a passionate animal advocate. So, in this memoir, Carlene shares the story of discovering at age 57 through a DNA test that she was adopted. And this fact was kept from her for her entire life. And that revelation became the foundation, the inspiration for the story that she wrote about her exploration of identity, belonging, and what it means to rewrite the story of what you thought you knew. We'll be talking with Carlene about the struggles and fears of writing about family, her writing process, her publishing journey, and we'll also be talking about her author platform. Carlene is one of those rare authors who actually likes marketing. Please let us get some of that too. Most of us really don't. So really looking forward to learning from you. And I know we're really curious to hear about how you built your platform, what's worked for you, and how you promote your writing. So Carlene, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, and I'm very excited to delve into our conversation today.
Great, great. Welcome. So let's just start with you've written a few other books. As I mentioned, you've written some other books besides this memoir. I think this is your first memoir, though, right?
It is
And when did you know that this story was one that needed to be told?
virtually immediately. I remember when my sister was standing in my living room reading to me because she had written these pages over and over, she said on the plane, but it was Carlene, you're adopted, and here is the story of what happened. I really remember thinking as soon as she finished reading, oh my God, that is a story. I was in shock. I was in shock. So many things were going, but I remember thinking in that moment. And at the end, when she left, this is the other thing too that happened, which is funny, is I turned around and looked at my husband, who looked like he was in shock. He looked like he was pale. He looked a little shivering. And I wondered, is that what I look like? Is that what I look like? Because I sure feel that way. And then I remember when my sister was leaving, I said to her, look, this story has been kept secret for 57 years, and I'm not going to keep it secret. That's just not who I am. And she said, tell your story, do whatever you want with it. It's your story. And so I virtually knew right away. And certainly but I wasn't ready to write it by no means. I was pretty much going through the shock of my life and had to let that settle and find all the answers I could in order to write the book.
Mhm.
But it wasn't foremost. So I started journaling from that moment on.
Had you thought previously about writing memoir?
Yes, you know what's interesting about that is that I was wondering after I had written my last book, I was thinking to myself, what would be the next book that I would write? And then I thought, well, the Junkyard Girl part, I thought, well, maybe that would be of interest to people. Maybe that would be an interesting story. So I had in mind, I'm going to write this part of it. But then suddenly I'm hit with this information, and I suddenly realized, wow, those two stories could be really weaved together
Mm.
to make something really strong and compelling, and certainly would help me if I were to write this to get a better, not understanding necessarily, but also I was in such a wobbly place with this information that I needed to get my bearings again. And I thought this would make a good story. So I had contemplated writing the memoir, just not the way that you see it today.
So had you already started writing your memoir, but without
No, I just was writing little notes here and there. And that's pretty much what I decided to do for quite a while, just take notes. I had to talk to people. I had to see what everybody knew. It's like I needed to, it's for example, the way I described in the book that, you know how you get a puzzle box and it has the picture on top, but there are all these pieces and you have to put it together. I thought that puzzle was, oh my gosh, that box was completely decimated. That picture of that family was gone, and I
Mhm.
had to put something back together. So I needed to learn all the pieces I possibly could, and I scrambled for that information for a lot of the year, trying to learn and see what the truth was, because I was adamant I need to know the truth now, every bit of it.
Mhm. And how did this differ from writing your other books?
Well, this is the first memoir, as you've said. The first book was nonfiction, and it was my first book, so I didn't know what I was doing. So I think I might have taken some kind of class online. I know at a certain point I got like a bit of a book coach, and I learned how to write something nonfiction. And at that moment, I realized one of the things that people seemed to really resonate with that book was that I was really writing from the heart, or I started to learn how to do that.
Mhm.
Before, I didn't want to put that part of myself out there. I just thought, well, I will write this and it'll be from my experience. But I found that the more I wrote from who I was and from my heart and from my experiences, people resonated with that, even in nonfiction. So the first book was very much a learning process. And then the next two books were companion books, and those were journals that spoke about the kind of the interactive quality of gratitude and having animals, and how animals can inspire you to have more gratitude in your life, which is a really important tool for anybody trying to get through this kind of messy experience of life. And so those were completely different. And then now suddenly I got Junkyard Girl and that idea and that experience. So that was a completely different experience from nonfiction or the journals. This was memoir. And I did take a class online, and I learned the importance of really immersing yourself into that experience. It may be very difficult, and it was at times to go there, but also I wanted answers, but I also did, even though it was difficult at times to go there, I did enjoy the process, remembering what it was like and knowing that I was safe now and not in that place where I couldn't get out of and never saw any way to escape from. So it was a whole other immersive process that made me very much come from the heart, very much explore emotions, see people for who they really were. And now I'm working on a novel. So it's but the thing I've done with the novel is taken a story from Junkyard Girl, because people kept saying, oh, I resonate with the story, I love this story.
Mhm.
And I took one that I really wanted to write and fictionalized it. So it's
Mhm.
quasi memoir, but I'm bringing it out into fiction.
Did you find that any of those styles was easier or harder or more natural than the others?
Well, the first one I felt was the hardest because I didn't know what I was doing. I had never done it before. But with each book, I learn. Each one, I can see I'm learning. My process is getting smoother. I'm willing, people use the expression finding your voice. And I do feel that that voice is coming out stronger and stronger in every book that I write. And that's very fulfilling and very satisfying. And also when readers connect with it, that's incredible. So I think that my first book was definitely the hardest. The next two, I was trying to go through the through the independent publishing route, self-publishing route, to understand it, which is why I did those journals. The next one oddly felt easier, and this one that I'm writing feels easier. But it's just, I think, just if you're, for example, an athlete, you go out every day, and maybe the first day you just go around the block. The next day you're running and you go for half a mile, and you keep doing it and doing it and
Mhm.
doing it. And finally you're running 5 miles a day. And I think it's similar for me.
So how long did it take you to write Junkyard Girl?
I was thinking about that, and there were stops and starts along the way, of course. And I would say that when I NaNoWriMo, are you familiar with that?
Yeah,
NaNoWriMo?
definitely. Hmm.
Okay. I always use NaNoWriMo as my jump off, my starting point. So I started with that. And I believe by the time I was ready, I mean, and then obviously you submit it to an editor they go through whatever changes and you're saying yes or no. And so that was a process. I had sent it to a developmental editor initially just to say, is this a story that works? Do you think, what do you think? So there was that process, but I would say it was probably about 8 months thinking.
Okay. Wow. And
which
what
to
was the
me
hardest?
feels which to me feels like a long time, but
Hmm. I'm not going to comment on how long I've been writing my memoir. Let's just say that that feels like that was fast. So is that from the beginning of starting writing all the way through to publishing?
no,
Okay.
that takes a lot longer,
Yeah. And your
especially when you're
publishing
trying
path, did you think about did you publish self-publish this or did you have a publisher?
on this. Every book to me feels like a new child into the world, and
Yeah.
I feel that every one of my books, I really think it through, which path will I want to take. When Junkyard Girl was ready, I spoke with somebody who often helps me as a consult to consult on books. And she was telling me at the time, because it was right after COVID, that her brother was a copyright attorney and was saying, "Oh my God, the marketplace is flooded with memoir right now." And she said that, and then also in the back of my mind, this would be a hard book for me to let go of the rights to.
Hmm.
And I know that if when you have to traditionally publish, you let go of those rights and many different rights. And in the end, I didn't feel I could do that. I couldn't let those rights go. They were just too personal. Also, I've been learning a lot about publishing and marketing and publicity. It's I wouldn't say it's part of the, but I do enjoy it. I was going to say it's a bit of a hobby. When people are like, "You want to go for a hike?" I'm like, "No, I'm taking this webinar. I'm learning this, or I'm doing that." To me, I actually enjoy that. So every morning when I am hiking, I do listen to a podcast, of some kind that will help me either with my craft or with my book marketing or publicity, as I've said. So um, I am doing that. And of course, I forgot your question. What was your question?
I was asking, what was my question? It was, how long did it take you to write it? Oh, and did you
Yeah.
decide to self-publish
Oh,
or did you
yeah.
think about going through a traditional publisher? I know that's always a
Mm-hmm.
difficult decision.
It is. And it's one that really kind of pulls my hair out. I pull my hair out because I know the pros, I know the cons. And as I said, for each book, it's a little different. My next one, I do hope to approach an agent and a traditional publisher.
Were your other books also self-published or
The
was,
first one was hybrid.
okay.
And the reason I did that, see, there's always good, for me at least, there's pretty solid reasons. So that book, Dog is My Doctor, Cat is My Nurse, is about the many extraordinary ways that animals help us lead healthier, happier, and happier life, happier, sorry, extraordinary
Fulfilling.
lives.
Yeah.
But I was an acupuncturist at the time, so I had my own wellness practice, and I was also an animal advocate, and I rescued, and I really felt strongly about the book. And at the time, what happened was when I started getting this idea and writing it, I started to notice that magazines were coming out about this topic. And I started to think by the time I would go with a traditional publisher, it might be a year and a half if I got lucky to 2 years. This would
Mhm.
be old news. So I thought, oh, I got to move faster. I got to move faster with this. And She Writes Press. I'm not sure if you're
Yeah.
familiar with, yeah.
Yeah.
So I used that company, which is a hybrid press, and I think they're very, very good. And I just paid attention to every single thing they did and took notes because I thought, okay, I need to know how this process works. And at this point, I'm oblivious to it. So I decided to go with them. And I just learned along the way.
Great. Great. Were there any surprises that came up during the writing or publishing process?
Out of all the questions you asked, that was the one I was a bit stumped with because I couldn't remember. Was there a surprise? And so I asked my husband, "Hey Ken, do you think there was a surprise?" And he just looked at me and then I went, "Oh yeah, COVID." COVID was the big surprise in the writing process. And one of the things I learned, which I learned so much every time I sit down to write a book, but with this book, I remember a friend calling me right before I started writing, and she said, "Oh my God, this COVID, are we all going to die? What's going to happen?" And I was feeling a little rocky after that call. And then I thought, well, what is the only thing I can control in this scenario? What is the only thing I can control? And it was to sit down every morning and to write. That was really the only thing I had. So so COVID was a big surprise, but it was also beneficial in many ways because I couldn't do anything else. That's why I got it done in 8 months.
That makes sense, actually. I think a lot of people really turn to writing during that time. It can be
Yeah,
very therapeutic.
very. And for when somebody goes through a trauma, which this was for me, and I know it was a trauma because I had physical and emotional reactions from it that were so unlike me. For example, when my sister first said the words to me, "You are adopted," I literally stopped being able to hear her. I could only hear her speaking in a muffled tone.
Mhm.
And I realized my body was having an emotional reaction to this news. Sorry, a physical reaction. And then the other part is I don't cry like tremendously. I don't do that a lot. But yet every day I'd wake up, I'd start crying. I'd tie my shoes, I'd cry, wash the dishes, I'd cry. And my husband would ask me, "Why are you? I've never seen you like this." And I would say, "I don't even know why I'm crying."
Mm.
But I needed to find a way to get to the bottom of all of this and rebuild my foundation again. My foundation had been pretty solid before this, but now it felt pretty just crumbling a bit. So I needed to find my bearings, and writing helped me do that.
Mhm.
Writing a memoir helped me do that.
Do you have any habits or tips for people who struggle to find time or the discipline to write?
Well, I think that the process of me from when I wrote my first book to now is so different. Again, I'll use that analogy of the athlete. You start off and you just go for a few minutes and you try to figure it out. Also, I was much busier when I first tried to write Dog is My Doctor, and I was working, but the I believe that mindset is so important, asking yourself what it is that you really want. And for me, I had it in the back of my mind, I have to be a writer. I have to. That is the thing that I know. And I remember waking up one day, literally waking up before I wrote my first book, and suddenly realizing, if not today, then when?
Mm.
If not today, then when? And I went and talked to my husband. I said, "I have to do this." And he said, "Fine. Well, how do we make this happen?" And so I think that mindset, and so that has been my driving force in my mind, knowing that this is my purpose, knowing that this is what I'm meant to do. And I keep that there. So if that is the case, I have to find time. I have to find time when I'm sitting there at the dentist's office and waiting for the dentist. And I do. I take my computer and I just write a few words. I make sure I get up every morning, and between now and lunchtime is my writing time. And people invite me to things, all sorts of things, and I usually say no. Not today. On the weekend, I can do the mornings, but not during the week.
Mhm.
I think that for me, because it means so much to me, that's what I need to do. I need to prioritize it. So it is a matter of mindset for me. And also, it's taken me a while to get rid of that inner critic, the
Mhm.
one that says you're not good enough, you're too small, you can't do that, and it's nagging. And I realize I haven't heard that critic for a while. I have not, and it's very pleasant not to. I mean, show up when I'm editing, but certainly not when I'm in the creative flow. So I would say mindset is so important, and maybe asking yourself why do I want to write to begin with? And also realizing, I think that there are many ways that we sabotage ourselves, like, oh, I need to go clean this kitchen.
Mhm.
Oh, well, I need to, oh my God, that thing on Netflix, I gotta watch that tonight.
Yeah.
But even if what if you took us 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, just to make that your time? I set a timer. I set a timer for writing blocks because I also know it's not good to sit all the time. So
Hmm.
I set my timer for about 45 minutes and then I go for it. Yay. And then I go do something else like, walk around or clean or do whatever. And everything gets done, oddly.
That's great advice. I need to be better about that myself. Those dishes are always calling.
I know. It's true.
So, did you know from the beginning when you decided that you wanted to write this book, did you know, were the themes clear to you? What it seemed to me like you had different layers. You had many different layers in your memoir. It felt like the core themes to me were shame, identity, and belonging, which are very universal themes. So many of us can relate to them. Did you know when you first started to write that that was what you wanted to focus on, or did it emerge as you were writing?
It emerged. I had no idea. It's hard sometimes as the writer to know what your themes are.
Hmm.
Somebody else has to tell you.
Yes.
And I remember sending a 20-page outline to the developmental editor, asking her, do you think this is any good? Do you think this is a story? What do you think? And she was the one who came up with exactly those themes. I had not even really thought of themes. I just thought of writing a good story, writing a story, first of all, and making it as good as I could. And the themes emerged at the end. At the
Mhm.
end, then I went through it and said, "Oh yeah, she's right. She's right. This is a story of family, and this is a story of belonging and shame and identity." And I could see all those layers that you've mentioned. And that tends to be something I do. I do write in layers. I see that even with my novel.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the process as far as you said you had a developmental editor? Did you have like a writing community that you were a part of? Did you have, how did you find your developmental editor and your beta readers or
Mhm.
any of that?
I do much better on my own. In fact, somebody asked me yesterday, "Do you want to join this?" And I said, "No." I actually, this is funny. Back in when I used to work in the film business as a film editor back in the
Mhm.
day, and I was in a little writing group with some people who are pretty well known now, who've written some pretty amazing things. And I remember the writing group was we would gather, we talk for a few minutes, and then we'd have lunch. So it became always about eating or something. Ever since then, I do know that I work better by myself. I just can work faster, more efficiently. I'd rather be in the headspace of being on my own when I write. Now, beta readers, what I do is every book, I mean, I have a nice list of people who follow me on either social media or my email list or my Substack. And many of them I know, many of them I don't know, many of them that I don't know wrote me after Junkyard Girl or after one of my books. And I've kind of made notes of all those people. And so therefore, when Junkyard Girl came out, I picked, I think, 6 readers that I thought would be good for me to, or that I would really respect their opinion and they wouldn't just say positive things just to say positive things. And that was fantastic. That those beta readers were tremendous. And then when the time came to put it out, and I had a review team, I had a like of over 100 people, and that all came from just consistently putting out a blog, kind of appearing in social media at times, that building that kind of readership. So that was fantastic. And let's see, the first editor, the developmental editor, was my editor on Dog is My Doctor, Cat is My Nurse. And the other editor, who was the line editor, was the consultant, recommended him, and I really liked him. So I'll use him again.
So this group of 100 readers, is that um, was that some group from your Substack, or do you have like a newsletter? Can you tell us more about
Mm-hmm.
your
Yeah.
network?
Yeah, the way I started with a blog on my website, which is animalhumanhealth.com, if anybody wants to look at that. And I started a blog, I think 9 years ago. And I didn't know what I was really doing at the time. So it has emerged. And then in later years, it totally became about the animal human bond, how animals help us live the healthier, happier, extraordinary lives that I talk about in my book. And then Substack came along, and I was having tea with another author, and she said, "What, you need more people to read your material, go on Substack." And it took me a while to kind of navigate that, like how does that work? How do you get paid subscribers? And I thought paid subscribers would be tremendous, and as well as the free subscribers, as long as you have that, because you're constantly building your lists, building my list on Substack, building myself through my website. When I go do appearances, I got that list that people can sign up for. So I write about that consistently. I write about that topic. And lately I've been doing it on Substack and then offering the audio version as a paid option. I don't know how many people listen to that. I think people just support the work if they like it.
Mhm.
So I pretty much throw the net out. I do as much media as I can, especially during my time of launching. Right now it's a little low because I don't have anything really to promote, but I also believe a lot in connection. I love connecting with people and meeting people and forming some kind of bond because I just like people in general. And those people tend to resurface again, either as people who write little testimonials from my book, or a beta reader, or a review. Somebody leaves a review. So I think just making connections is so powerful.
Mhm. So what is your favorite medium for marketing your book?
With marketing the book, it's not always about sales. It's not always about sales. So it could be about getting people to sign up for your lists. It could be about future sales. It could be somebody who says, "Hey, come talk to my group," or come talk to at, some affair that we're having. There's always, because I'm looking at this as a future. I'm looking at this as a career. I'm looking into, and what's important here is to expand my network as much as I possibly can, as much as I can. And it's not huge. I mean, it doesn't like, it'd be great if it was a downpour, but it's day by day by day. So I enjoy very much doing media appearances. It's one of my favorite things to do.
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think, unless I have done big things in the United States, like ABC, CBS, network television, and then I have seen good spikes in my book sales. But other than that, I don't necessarily. But what I do see is people emailing me or saying something or connecting with me in some way and then signing up to follow me with my writing. I love doing that. I do love uh, going to bookstores or events and getting up and talking. I do, that is something I enjoy. I do enjoy public speaking, and I certainly wasn't like that when I started, believe me. I took
Mhm.
a Toastmasters
Ah,
and I became better at that. And now I enjoy it mostly because I have found that a secret to this, if anybody wants to know, that a secret for me when I do media, a secret for me when I go talk in bookstores or whatever it is I forget that there's all those people in there. I've done a TEDx talk. I forgot that there was anybody in the room. I just focused on there's one person in the audience and I'm having coffee or tea with them. And I imagine that. And and I think that shows up as intimacy or as authenticity or as something very, that people seem to enjoy. So I do that whether I'm on TV or whether I'm just talking to people at a bookstore.
and
So
so how do you
I
make
do enjoy
those?
that. I Those are my favorite things to do in terms of just what I enjoy doing. And I realize not everybody is maybe as extroverted as I am, but there's so many things that we can do in our own wheelhouse.
And how do you make those connections to do those speaking events and have the confidence? I think that's probably a big part of what many authors struggle with is that inner critic telling them, oh, I don't want to brag, or I don't, I'm not good enough. How do you overcome that? What's your
I
advice?
remember being one of those authors. I remember so clearly. And I remember I also took a very extensive course with some people in Philadelphia. And I remember the head of the company calling me one day for my private call. And he said, "So, what is this book, Dog is My Doctor, Cat is My Nurse, about?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, it's about this, I was like that kind of. He says, "Okay, I'm going to hang up. Next week, I'm going to call you again. And next week, I want you to say, I'm the author of the upcoming book, Dog is My Doctor, Cat is My Nurse. And it is a book about the way that animals help us live healthier, happier, and extraordinary lives. And I
Mhm.
want you to say it like that and don't call me until then." And I was like, "Oh God, that's so." So for the next week, I literally drove around in the car where nobody could hear me and I'd practice. Then I'd go in the mirror in the bathroom and I'd practice. And oddly enough, that little step, because yeah, by the time he called me again, I was all in it. I was all on it. And I said it that way. And he said, "Well, I believe you." And I believed it myself.
Oh, that's great.
So, that's a very little thing to do, but maybe that's something that anybody on this call can pick up and say and see how you're positioning yourself or putting yourself in front of people, or maybe use a friend. You could use a mirror like I did, or go in the car, or maybe a good friend can listen to you and they can tell you, maybe just take it in little bits. Maybe say this first line first until you really own it.
Hmm.
So I learned a lot about that, and I learned the importance of mindset again. And a big thing is, if you are not promoting yourself, who is? If
Right.
you want people to read your story and you think your story is important, then really it has to come from you. People have to believe you and feel that. Otherwise, unless you get a publicist and pay a lot of money, or a PR person and pay a lot of money, nobody else is going to be promoting you. So even if it's in little steps, even if you took a baby step today and maybe did what I just said in front of the mirror, that's a really wonderful foundation to start with. And every day you take a little step. Every day, 365 or however many days in a year there are at the end. That's a pretty large step. Those are many steps. So I would say that I understand the fear around that, but that's our own fear. And that's really something that I think is valuable for us to look at just as people in general, too, because it may not just keep you from being the author you want to be, but from other things in life.
Yeah, definitely. I find that really interesting that so it sounds like just having that kind of elevator pitch was a key part to having the confidence.
I remember that being a huge first step. And then just seeing how other people did it,
Hmm.
seeing, and also, again, I think I put myself in places like Toastmasters that I will tell you, the first time I ever got up and talked in front of an audience, I almost couldn't speak. I spoke like my voice went up, I don't know how many octaves, and I was barely able to get through that. And
Hmm.
now I feel very confident doing that. But that took a while, and I kind of kept at it. And so I think putting myself in situations that really pushed my comfort zone, and also people were encouraging in it. I don't do well when people are not encouraging and tell you you're terrible. Or I put myself
Of course.
purposely around people who, bolster me up, and I do the same for them. So I think that really helped. But also,
Hmm.
no, it's not an overnight experience. I think that it takes time, but it can be very enjoyable also. Again, if you tell yourself, "Hey, what's the best I can do today? What is the one thing I can do today?" And then at the end of the day, tell yourself right before you go to sleep, when your brain waves are in that place, "Hey, I did really good. You know what I did today? I talked to Christina in her group. And then today I actually wrote 2 chapters in my book. And then today I also, I don't know, sent out a marketing thing to somebody," and you go to sleep, and your brain in that state kind of reinforces it. And it's a very good time to put those things and at the very beginning of the day. You
Hmm.
wake up and you're like, "Okay, today, what am I going to do? What are the 3 things I'm going to do? What's the one thing I'm going to do?"
Yeah, I think it's so important to focus on the things that you have done as well, like you were just saying,
Mm-hmm.
instead of thinking about going to bed thinking about, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. That doesn't help you get more done the following day.
No, I believe it doesn't. But, it has taken me a while. The other thing I do, I have a very strong gratitude practice. So I wake up every morning, really, literally going through why is this going to be a great day? And it can be very small things, even though it doesn't even have to be book related. It can just be, God, I get to live in this house that I really love. I get to be around people that I really like. Today I took this wonderful bike ride, but I didn't know I was doing something to boost my confidence as much as I was when I started a gratitude practice. But I do know that with what happened in Junkyard Girl, I had written 2 gratitude journals right before that. So I was immersed in that. So in a way, that writing of gratitude helped me so much when finally somebody said, I know it's been 57 years, but you're adopted.
Um, I wondered if you could tell us more. Were there some marketing avenues you tried that didn't work for you? And for people who don't like to try public speaking, what advice do you have for them?
One of the biggest pieces of advice beyond mindset, I always start there, beyond that, and I'm actually putting together a teachable workshop around that because I think this is something I learned pretty strongly is there are a million things you could literally do. Okay, not literally, maybe not a million, but a lot of things you can do to market your books. And some of them work for some people, some of them don't work. I think it's very different, but the one place that I often recommend that people begin, and it's where I began, especially with the launch of my book, is in your own backyard. People seem to forget that. Like, for example, I know I did. I mean, when I first launched Dog as My Doctor, Cat as My Nurse, I went as big as I could and I launched everywhere. Certainly, that was a few years ago. I had more energy. And I did have a publicist who helped me. She wrangled the West Coast and I tried to do the East Coast. And we got a lot, I got a lot of publicity around that. But what I've learned is if you start in your own backyard with the people you know, and like think of it in concentric circles, marketing, start here. If you start at the beginning, who do you know who lives next door to you who might have a business where you could go maybe talk at or just sign books at? Businesses want to draw people in to buy whatever it is that they're selling. Could you be an asset? So who do I know? What businesses do I know around me who might benefit from that, even though I don't know anybody there? Somebody else might know somebody. You might belong to some organization like a church. Churches often want people to come and speak at their events. There might be some kind of book fair in your area. Here in Santa Fe, there's a huge one. I haven't participated only because I seem to be out of the country or out of the area in May, but there would be a really good opportunity that I haven't tapped into. What bookstores are in your area? They often want to support local authors. There are so many things that I've done. And I will just say, for example, when I first moved to Santa Fe, I didn't know one person. I came from California. I did not know one person in this area. What I did do, and I feel this was an interesting way that launched some things, was I read an article about this guy who had been the head of Reuters in Asia for many years, and he lived in Santa Fe, and he also loved animals. And I thought he was funny in the interview that they did with him. And I reached out to him. I mean, what did I have to lose? I mean, no to me is fine. You say no, okay. Or ghosting
Not the end
me,
of the
okay,
world.
that's
Yeah.
fine. I mean, it doesn't really hurt me unless I let that. And he reached out again, and he reached out, and we developed this little email and relationship. And then when I moved here, I met him, and he was incredible. He was one of the people who gave me a review on my book. He also introduced me to so many people. Sometimes it's not just one person it's the one person who knows so many people.
Mhm.
And then so he then introduced me to other journalists in the area. He introduced me to an amazing friend. I love her to bits, who became my in conversation partner at bookstores. Do you all know what in conversations are?
Tell us a little more about that.
Okay, this is something I really recommend if anybody is looking to make it easier. If you're an introvert, this might be a much easier way. It certainly is a lot less work for any author. But sometimes at bookstores, when you go and you speak, you give a presentation about your book, or not presentation, but you talk about your book and this and that. And that can be a little nerve-wracking. What I learned was I hooked up with this woman that my friend introduced me to. She lives 5 minutes from here, and she had been a newscaster in St. Louis, the nighttime news, for 30 years. And I remember my friend said, "You don't understand how famous she actually is in her area." And I was like, "Oh, really?" So we became great friends. She's amazing. And so I started doing in conversations with her, which meant that we would get up in front of the bookstore or the library or wherever, and she would ask me questions about the book because she was so expert at asking questions on national television. And so she would ask me questions, I'd answer. And again, it wouldn't feel like I was in front of an audience. It
Hmm.
would feel like I'm having a discussion with a friend at a coffee shop. And people really resonated with that. So he led me to her, she led me to other people, and so on. And so this is why I think, gosh, you never know who you know. I reached out to this guy I absolutely didn't know. And this is kind of what's happened. So I'm not sure if I answered your question well, but
I think that that was really helpful to hear if there's no harm in asking.
there is no harm. As somebody once told me, especially from media, because media doesn't always respond on the first time or the second time or even the third time. But don't take it personally. Honestly, do not take it personally. It doesn't mean no, it doesn't mean they don't like you, it doesn't mean you don't have anything of value. It just either means no right now, or I just got so busy, I didn't see this.
Yeah. Were there any things that you tried for marketing that didn't work for you that you feel like were not worth your time?
Well, I don't know. This is the thing. I had a conversation with somebody and I said, I love doing book clubs. I really love doing that. And she says, I don't necessarily think they're going to be your best use of time.
Mm.
And I thought of that and I thought, you're right. I have so many other things to do. But I said, I really love doing them. I really enjoy the people I meet. I enjoy the questions that are being asked. I love the connection. So I don't know if book sales are your number one thought and your focus, it may not be the best thing. It depends what your goals are. Is it book sales? Is it getting followers? Is it something else? One thing, I try different things. Like even now that I'm getting so close to being done with my novel, I thought, okay, what's next? And then I came up with this idea of writing a dozen short stories and then sending them out to different publications. Like I'm already going to start sending next. I've compiled a list of places that might take it or contests that I could submit it or something and start sending those out. Because I'm always thinking, what's the best ROI, return on investment for me,
Mhm.
whether it's followers or sales. And I thought, well, I need to get it out. I need to get it out so other people can read it. And these are markets that I've never tapped into. So this is something I'm going to try, whether it works or it doesn't, I don't know. But I do know that at the end of it, after I try this, that I could actually then put those 12 short stories into a compilation or submit them to other compilations. So I'm always trying to think, what can they do that works, like two things that only take me one step to do. I'm trying to think of the shortcuts.
And well, it sounds like
So
you're also
I
trying to do things that you actually enjoy. And
and
I think
oh,
that's really big.
absolutely. I don't want to do things that I don't enjoy yet. This is funny. When the idea was presented to me many years ago with dog is my doctor, cat is my nurse, why don't you go speak to businesses that are concerned about their employees' health and wellness? And you can talk to them about this. And I thought to myself, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go talk to businesses. And then it was just presented to me like a few days ago. Why don't you do this? And I went, okay, that sounds great.
Hmm.
So I think maybe one changes over time.
Definitely. Um, how did you find us?
I found you through a Google search.
Yeah? What did you search
Yeah.
for?
I don't know, probably keywords like book clubs, memoir, organization, something like that. But you
Okay.
certainly came up.
Okay. And so that could be something other people could do too, is just to search for book club and find a book club that they could come go speak to.
Right. Well, they're very specific. They're often very specific book clubs.
Mhm.
Like, for example, I've spoken to, I forgot what the full name is, but the Memoir Association in the United States that, um,
The one in
boy,
California?
yeah, she has three names. Linda Joy Myers
Yes. Yes.
does. So I've spoken there. So depending on what your book is, I think I would hone in on what that subject is. Because, for example, maybe okay, as a memoir, I don't know, might be some specific organization that would really want to hear from you.
Hmm.
And you could just type in those keywords or get AI to help you type in those keywords into AI. I mean, if you do a Google search, that is AI. And uh, see, also, once you get your list, make sure you research those people, because I didn't just call you after I got the list. I looked to see who you were, try to find, something. I did learn somewhere that you liked animals.
Hmm.
uh,
Yep.
you were memoirists, you had these kind of things. I just tried to read a little bit about the organization. And obviously what helps too is if you can listen to another interview that was being done that you've done before.
And you messaged me twice. I missed your
Mm,
first message,
yes.
and you could have just said, "Oh, she doesn't want to talk to me." I don't know. After you sent me another message, I thought, "Oh, what happened? I didn't see that first message." And you were so kind about it, and it was just so natural, and it was obviously, I think maybe the first one, maybe I just saw it and thought it was spam or something.
Mm,
But you reached out and you made it clear that this is a personal connection, and it felt really easy just to say yes. After reading your email, you seemed
mhm.
like it was a really great connection, and I think that we could really learn from that style of just don't be afraid of rejection, and what does it really hurt to reach out. I'm so glad you did reach out, and reach out again. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
Um,
that as the person said to me, be persistently, the one about media, be patiently persistent.
mhm.
And yeah, though it's a good piece of information. If you did think it was spam, I got to go relook at that and see what I may have worded in the subject line to make you think that. So,
Well, I get so many emails, and I don't know that I necessarily really did think that, but it didn't really click until the second time that I saw it when I saw that you said maybe you didn't see my first email or something like that. And then I was like, oh, this person has reached out and I didn't mean to ignore them. And so I
you
think that was really it could be a lesson to take
Well,
myself.
I'll share another story about that patient persistence. But when Junkyard Girl came out, I was looking what other countries, English speaking countries, because the book's in English, could I reach out to beyond the United States? What podcasts could I do? Because I was doing a lot of podcasts. And I reached out to this podcaster in Canada, and he wrote back and said, "Oh, I'm really busy right now, but yeah, send me the book at some point," or I don't know what he said. But then I reached out to him months later, like probably 3 months later. And I said, "Oh, I just wanted to reach out again and see if you might be interested in this is what the book, just really quickly." And he said, "Yeah, that sounds interesting, but we've become so popular that I'm only interviewing celebrities now,
Mm.
and I don't know that I could." And he said, "But why don't you send me the book?" So I did. And then a few months later, I reached out again. I said, "Oh, did you get a chance? What are your thoughts?" And he said, "Well," he said, "I'm sorry, I haven't. I've just been so busy." And I said, "No worries, don't worry, it's fine." He goes, "But I'm going to read it." And so he reads it. and writes back to me. I think I saved it. It was so beautiful and it was so positive. And he said, I only interview celebrities now, but I want to interview you because I love this book and I love animals and all this business. He said, but now I have a team. We've gotten so famous. I have a team and I have to run it by them. And he goes, but I'm going to go in there. And so by the end of the day, he says, you're on this show. So I was like, wow, because I saw his reach in Canada was huge. And so I prepared as well as I could. And I did all my mindful practices and all of that. And I got on there. When it was over, he said, gosh, you spoke so well. And he was saying very positive things. And then by the end of the week, he said, I think we reached 4 million views.
Wow.
So I thought to myself, that is a huge lesson to me about just persisting
Yeah.
patiently and politely. And we've stayed friends, which
Oh,
is
that's great.
insane.
There's some comments in the chat right now. People are saying that this talk was filled with lots of helpful nuggets of wisdom, and your positivity and gratitude practice are inspiring. Um, Such a great story. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
We haven't really touched on some other things that like are specific to outside of the marketing part, as far as like one of the big fears that we have as memoirists, many of us worry about what is our family going to think when they read. And and I wondered if you could speak to how that went for you. And it's so great that you started out saying that your sister said tell your story. But did you still have fears and were you still nervous? And can you tell us about how that went for you?
Yeah, that's a big one, I think, for any memoirist. But you'll have to remind me because I have a great story about Isabel Allende at the end of this,
Oh, okay. Love
the
her.
author. So I needed to write that story. It was almost like I have to write it because I have to figure this all out. Somehow it was putting the puzzle pieces back together again for me to write the story. And for it to make sense, because once I finished the book, it made better sense in my mind, everything that had happened. There were just so many pieces to it. And I did feel a substantial shift from the beginning to the end, like, oh, I'm better. Also, because I adopted a dog at the time. So that made me feel better. But yes, then came the time. I have to show this to my family. My parents had passed away, and I don't believe I would have published the book if they had been living.
Hmm.
I believe the book would have been a different story if they had been alive. Suddenly they would have contributed to the conversation or not. And what would our relationship be depending on how they would have responded? So my siblings were alive. When I got to my last pass, what I believed was my last pass, I sent it to my two brothers and my sister, already prepared because I had a friend who also wrote a memoir. And he said, gave it to my family and no one read it.
Hmm.
Oh, can
Hmm.
you believe that? And I thought, that's interesting. But then I heard that from other people that
Yeah.
their close family members did not read it. So one brother I didn't hear from. The other brother I didn't hear from. And I said, you're going to have to read this because I'm getting close to publishing. And he goes, okay. And then I said, okay, I'm getting close to publishing and you haven't read it. And he, he didn't read it. My sister, on the other hand, did read it. And I was grateful that she did because I thought the information would be a little hard for her. I did try to be as honest. I really did feel that I tried to be as honest about everything that I believed happened. But she has always felt a real allegiance to my parents and wanted to give me her take on certain things. And she was very kind about it. She didn't say, oh, you shouldn't write this. Or she goes, I just want you to see or hear my take on it. And depending on some of the things she said, I thought, well, that's fair. That's fair. Let me go back and look at those bits. And then I think I did another pass based on what she said. But I did feel some hesitation. I thought, will people be talking to me after this? But I felt this is twofold. She had said, do whatever you want with your story. And twofold, I thought, my family did not tell me I was adopted for 57 years, they lost their rights. I kind of did feel that way. And I did send it to the half sister I learned about in the adoption, and she loved it. So I felt okay about putting it out there. I did not know how the rest of my extended family, which included 63 cousins, 63 first cousins, would respond. But I think that they thought they were on the cover of Time magazine. They were all so excited about it. So that worked out well for me that I didn't have that. But I was a little bit, I could feel myself wobbly about it, but I also felt it had to be done. Now, I just want to say about Isabel Allende, which was, I love her writing. I have always loved her writing. And my husband, when we were first going out, one day he lived in San Francisco. I lived in Los Angeles. And he said, I bought you a 6-person meeting with Isabel Allende where she's going to talk and at this really amazing bookstore. And I was like, oh my God. So I flew out there. And Isabel Allende was talking to us. And one of the things she said was, when that question got brought up, he said that when House of the Spirits came out, her family didn't want to talk to her. They were so mad at her. So she didn't visit them for some time. And then the movie came out of House of the Spirits. And she came home. And suddenly on the grand piano were pictures of Meryl Streep and Jeremy Irons. Suddenly everybody was into it. So who knows how families are going to react. And I certainly understand how somebody could feel nervous about that experience. And you can never, ever guarantee how somebody else will react to anything, even if you're talking to them, much less if they think you've written about them in a book. I was very careful about not criticizing people, just saying the situation that it happened as I remembered. And there were certainly people in there who I could have said more about and chose not to, because even though I changed names and changed things like the way they looked, maybe somebody might recognize themselves. So I was careful. And I'll say that one person in that book that I was very, very tiptoeing around, but felt it was needed to be addressed. A relative of theirs called me and said, boy, did you take the high road. So I thought that was funny.
Yeah. So that is a good question, or something I'd like to ask is, did you, for the most part, keep people's names? Did you change everyone's names? What was your decision process on that?
There's something at the beginning of the book, I believe, or at the end, that addressed that. But I pretty much changed everybody's name except for my husband, my stepkid, or who became my stepkids, and my 3 siblings and my parents. And then there were cousins that I mentioned, and I called each one of them and I said, I'm talking in this book about, I've mentioned something you said. Would you like me to change? This is what I said. Would you like me to change your name? And everybody was like, no, leave my name. So that was good. Everybody else's names I changed. And streets, for example, where we lived in Carpinteria, California. Though what's funny was I changed the name on purpose to Escondido Lane, which means hidden lane if you speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Somebody I had tea with months after the book was published, who's such an introvert, I could not imagine her doing this. She said, I found your house. I took all of the hints in there and I found your house.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So, did you ever struggle with like what to leave in, what to take out, and which part really was your story to tell? Were there pieces that you wanted to include, but you felt like they weren't your story to tell, or they just didn't fit?
I knew that writing memoir really called for you to go in deep and pull it out and share. But how much to share? I remember asking, when the developmental editor read the first draft of the book, there was something so personal in there that I was wobbly about sharing it. It's nothing I've ever shared with anybody, but just wondered if that added to the story. I should include it because there was something linking it to my new story. And I said to her, do you feel I should share this? Or do you feel that I can be okay leaving it out? She says, leave it out. You don't have to share that. And which I was grateful for, to leave that out. She also, again, I think you asked a question in there about, because I'm an animal advocate,
Yeah.
how come I didn't write more about that? And it was exactly what you said. It wasn't the focus. So I have spoken about it, but not, I did mention some other paragraphs. I remember some other pages about it. And she said, it's not the focus. Don't include that.
Mhm.
So I was grateful to have somebody like her. But again, it's a learning process, and developmental editors are expensive.
Mhm.
And in this new book, I didn't feel that I needed one. I learned from the last one, what to leave out. And also, I used to be an editor in on films, on big films. And even though that's a visual process of editing, I learned a lot. I learned not to be too precious with my story and just go, that doesn't work, take it out. Okay, what isn't working? What do I need, or where do I need to change things? For me, I want to tell a good story in the end. I want
Mhm.
people to resonate with it, to be entertained, to learn something. So I'm willing to drop things when beta readers say, I didn't understand this, or I don't know about this. I'll look into it and I'll drop it. I'm okay with that.
Do you have any advice that you would give to new memoirists?
Oh, that's the end of the question. Okay. Yes.
Open-ended.
There's so much advice that where to start. Again, please start with mindset. Please start with that. It is the foundation of everything. Because if you don't have that in place, then I believe that it's hard to build on that. But I would also say, look at your why. Why are you writing?
Mhm.
Why is this important to you? Why are you spending your time, your energy on something that perhaps may not, go as far as you would like? Or what is your why? And just
Mhm.
connect with this. And maybe also understand that probably if you wrote it, you have something important to say. And in some ways, even though we're all maybe a little shy about it, gosh, can you imagine if something you said in your book had a really beneficial effect on somebody else who's struggling? And what if you never got it out there and that person never read that? I mean, I'm always so grateful when somebody says how much the book, whatever I've written, has helped them, because this is kind of a world then, especially these days, that is just so topsy-turvy. And for example, I write Substack. I write a Substack, and every week I get comments about how something in that has really helped somebody. And that fuels me, that keeps me going. So
Mhm.
maybe I would also say, surround yourself with people who support you and who aren't knocking you down and saying, you can't do that, or most writers don't succeed, or whatever it is that they want to say. That's their stuff, really. That is their stuff. And I also start with, what can I do today? What's one thing, one small step that I can do to commit to, and actually jot it down. So at the end of the day, you have to cross that off. And then maybe next week, and build slowly, build slowly. Next week, add two things. Like I put three things on my list to do, and I put stars next to it, but it's three things, not 10 things,
Yes.
because then you're going to start giving yourself a really hard time. And if you're in the long game, it does take a while. So if I hopefully that helps. I mean, there's a million
Definitely.
things that I could really say, but also if you feel that tug, like I felt the tug to be a writer. If not now, then when? And I knew that I did not want to get to my last day on earth and see on my tombstone, though I won't have a tombstone, but it was like that I didn't get there, that I didn't write the books I wanted to.
Mhm.
So I would just say, and be gentle and easy on yourselves. I mean, really, please do that. So
Excellent
hopefully
advice.
that's some good advice.
That is definitely excellent advice. Thank you so much. Elisa agrees. Great and practical advice. Thank you so much. Does anyone in the audience have any questions to ask? think it was an excellent conversation. Lisa says she asked some questions. Uh-oh, I missed them earlier. She said, you took some writing courses on memoir. Can you share which ones and what podcasts fill your ears on hikes that help you with developing your craft?
Sure. The class I took was given by, and not only took a class, I did read a book by the same authors, but there was, I think, two books I read, but now I don't remember. But the writing class I took on memoir was from Brooke Warner and I think Linda Joy
Yep,
Myers
I
on
took that
She
one too.
Writes Press. You could probably Google those things and find it. Did you take it
Extra.
too?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So I used that. I also read Brooke Warner's book on memoir. And there was another person, maybe Linda Joy Myers wrote a book on memoir. I think I read those. Those are
Mhm.
the three things. And then I read memoir, and I read a lot of memoir to see how people were doing it. So those were the courses I took. And then what was the second part of that?
It was what podcasts fill your ears?
Oh, yeah, the podcasts. So I do have a lengthy little list of podcasts, but it also depends on what phase I'm in. Like, for example, for craft, if I'm in the craft phase, I'll go listen to, have you heard of Savannah Gilbo?
No, I haven't.
Oh, I love her stuff because it's very basic. She doesn't fill it with a lot of stuff. She just tells you what you need to know. And she comes from the school of StoryGrid. Do you know StoryGrid?
I don't.
Okay, so StoryGrid's really great stuff, but kind of complicated.
Okay.
And Savannah kind of takes it and simplifies it. And I love, if I need to know something about dialogue, I'll just look at scan dialogue and find that. Or I need to know and she talks about marketing too, but mostly craft. So Savannah Gilbo, I listen to Joanna Penn for
Mhm.
marketing.
She's
Joanna
great.
Penn. I also, who's the other one? Oh, yeah, right now I'm almost done with my book and I'm going to have to write a query letter, which, oh, I dread. I don't know how you guys feel about that. But I do listen to, it is called this, I'm not making it up, The Shit You Don't Know About Writing. And it's two agents, CC Lyra and Carly Waters, and they talk about that whole process. But let's just see really quickly. I just want to see who else I've got on. Those are the ones. Oh, you know what? Brooke Warner now, and the guy she had her, they used to have a
Brent
podcast.
Faulkner.
Yes, they now are totally focused on memoir.
Yes.
So I haven't been listening to that because I'm not on doing, my next book isn't memoir, but Joanna Penn's podcast is called The Creative Pen.
Mhm.
Savannah Gilbo's is called Fiction Writing Made Easy. So that's not for memoirists. I also have here the Resilient Writers Radio Show, book marketing tips for author success. Gosh, I have so few. I must have cut out a lot of people. Oh yeah, in the United States they have the Independent Book Publishers Association. They have a podcast as well, and those are I sometimes Book Marketing Mentors. I listen to that. So those are some of the ones I listen to. I never can keep up. There's so many
Yeah,
podcasts.
that's a lot.
Thank you so much. This has just been such a wonderful, encouraging presentation and Q&A, and wonderful questions and really helpful answers and very relatable.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, I really appreciate that. And I just did want to throw in that I will be having this teachable workshop. Hopefully this will really push me into getting it done within the next 3 months. Again, this idea that you can be in your backyard and, because, almost like, you remember the accidental tourist, he was in his armchair and didn't want to leave the armchair, but there's so much that you can do that you don't have to venture out into the huge world. I mean, it's not bad if you want to, but there's so much. Just start paying attention. just start
Yes.
paying attention around you. And I'm also going to have the workshop, so that might give you ideas on how to promote your memoirs.
Will you be sharing about that on your Substack? Is that where we can find out more?
Yeah, I'll do that when it's out. It will be a teachable course, so it'll have like all sorts of extras, like besides the videos on there, and there it would also have like some resources, and templates and things like that you could use.
Okay, great. We'll be watching for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be watching for it too. I've been working on it for a while.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Carlene. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing. And yes, I agree. Everything you've said has been so positive and inspiring, and I'm really glad you came. I'm really glad you sent that second email to me. And thank you for being so generous. And I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Well, thank you. And good luck, everybody, with your memoirs and your stories. And it was just really a joy to be here.